We're live. I suppose I should open up my timer, shouldn't I?
Oh, we can hear you.
I think I should open up my timer, shouldn't I?
Test?
Test.
Hear you. Okay, good. There we go. Okay.
Well, that was weird. Okay. Here we go. Stretch it. Get the stretches out. Get the giggly, get the goosey goosies out. Okay. Here we go. Podcast time. Fuck.
Whoa.
Oh, sorry. Get the giggles out. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Henshin! No, I'm kidding. 3, 2, 1. This podcast is brought to you by the Arate Podcast Network. Please go to aratemedia.com for many podcasts from all of our great friends, as well as, if you want to start your own podcast, you can go there and they will help you out. That's aratemedia.org. ARETE media.org. On with the show, Jordan.
On with the show, Justin.
Welcome, a little late on this late Saturday afternoon, to the Spur of the Moment podcast. I, as I'm always, am your host. My brains are scrambled. I'm Justin Spurr, everybody. With me, as always, is my co-host, who's equally scrambled. It's the incomparable Jordan, everybody.
I'm pretty incomparable.
It's incomparable. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about some news. We got various news, including that Wizards of Waverly Place reboot. It's going to series, apparently. There's a new Captain America game, apparently. There's a few trailers. And then later, we're you know me. I love experimenting with the format. For book reports, we're going to be talking about live action Japanese stuff. Jordan's got one non-tokusatsu show or movie, and then it's all tokusatsu, baby. We're going to be talking about Kamen Rider in a general sense. We've got 2 individual shows we're going to be discussing. It's going to be fun. You're going to learn something for those of you who don't know anything about tokusatsu, about sentai and Kamen Rider. It's going to be a lot of me explaining shit to Jordan and to the audience. But with that, let's leap into our news. Jordan, do our news theme. Stop, it's bad. It's bad every time. I don't know why I asked for it. It's not good. It's bad. Anyway, yeah. So officially they announced that there's been a series order for that Wizards show. So they're making it. It's coming out. We're getting it. Apparently, I guess the pilot went well. And it's coming out. And are you excited for that, Jordan? Are you excited for this Wizards reboot? Do you think it's going to be as good, better, not as good?
I am going to be 100% honest with you. I am largely indifferent and do not care.
I know, same here. I put it in my rotation of news notes, and I was like, I don't care. I don't know why I'm pretending I care.
It's a thing that I'm not surprised is coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, right? Disney has been going through a slew of like, oh, this is the reboot of the remake of the redo of the retread of the retelling of the.
Everybody want a requel. Nobody want a sequel. Everybody want a requel, Jordan. That's the key here. The requel.
And it does.
It's better. Ooh, I feel weird about doing that joke now.
It is certainly a thing.
It is certainly a thing. Did you watch? I've got it here because I meant to send it to you, and then I was like, Jordan's not gonna have any time to watch any trailers. Did you see that they released a new trailer for Doctor Who, the new season of Doctor Who?
I briefly skimmed it, didn't watch the full thing. I read that David Tennant is apparently seeable in there. At the 36-second mark, I think it was.
Oh, really? I didn't.
That's what I read. I didn't skim through it to see if it was true. I didn't verify the facts.
Interesting.
That's just what I heard.
I watched it once and I was like, this is very Disney. This is a very Disney trailer. Like, you're really seeing that Disney money.
I can see why you'd say that. Well, it looks fine.
So I wonder that to me Ruby Rose is either his daughter or granddaughter. calling it. If he's in that trailer, that means he's coming back. That means that's gonna pay off. I think it's gonna end up being that it's the other David Tennant and Rose's kid. I think it's gonna turn out that I stand by that. I stand by that theory. Everyone called me crazy, but I stand by it.
From the looks of it, we won't see for a while because I don't think that comes out for a while.
May. That trailer also announced the release date, which is like May 16th or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
I mean, if it comes to Disney Plus and it's easy to watch, I'll watch it. I have nothing to lose.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I've got Disney Plus. Apparently, they've confirmed that the Disney Marvel zombie show is going to be M-rated.
So it might actually be good.
It might actually be good. I mean, so long as it's not 6 episodes. We're going to talk about why 6 episodes, 7 episode shows suck today. But they suck, and they do something. Do a 20 episode season, for the love of God. They announced that apparently they're making Happy Gilmore 2.
Why?
I don't know. Of the old Adam Sandler movies,
it doesn't really feel like
it's the one that needs a sequel. It's the one that needs a sequel the least, I think.
Yeah, I don't really see what you do for it.
He's playing a different sport. He's playing soccer this time.
Oh, so he's just gonna be Air Bud.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, no. Apparently, there's been a first draft, and it's been given to the guy, and apparently it's good. So I don't know. I just, what do you do? Yeah, what are you doing with Happy Gilmore 2? Like, what is? That's my only thing. Is he's playing another sport? That's what you're doing with Happy Gilmore 2.
I don't get it, man.
Is it he's playing more golf?
What is it? Like he's gonna play lacrosse or hockey or something else that's like him holding a thing that's down on the ground, hitting a ball with another object?
He got over his anger issue, so I don't know. Yeah, what do you do for Happy Gilmore 2? The only thing I could think of, another sport. Did you watch the Beetlejuice 2 trailer?
Nope.
No? There's not much. There's not much to talk about. It's just...
I don't think I've ever seen the original Beetlejuice, so I don't really have a interest in it.
I remember I remember watching it as a child, and I remember you being there.
I have no memory of it.
It's not much. It's just like it's a teaser trailer, so it's like they show like landscape shots. You see Jenna Ortega's character, you see Winona Ryder's back, and then you see Beetlejuice, and boy howdy, does he look like Beetlejuice. It's kind of amazing. It looks just like him. So if you know Beetlejuice, you'll be into it. I'm not really all that interested in it. I never really
I just know
Beetlejuice.
I just know that in Ted there's the joke where he's like, I'm gonna summon Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. What the hell do you think you're doing?
Do you want him to show up on this podcast? No, you don't want him to do that. We don't want to open that kind of
Beetlejuice.
Dude, it's not cool. It's not cool what you're doing. It's not cool. It's not cool. Apparently, Margot Robbie and the director who directed Loki are making a Sims live action movie.
I heard something about that because the Smosh cast, some of them had made jokes about it in their stories and stuff on Instagram.
Yeah.
But okay. I mean, I didn't see Barbie, but then I saw Barbie and I was like, okay, I can see Barbie.
Right.
So I could now I've heard the faith has been earned for the possibility of a Sims movie.
Right.
I don't see how it's much different than a Barbie movie necessarily.
I don't get how it's any different than. It just seems like you would just do Barbie. It's they're in the Sims world and then they come to the real world. That's like the one plot you can do with it. And then in the Sims world, they all speak Simlish, and then they come to the real world and it's a fish out of water story, and they're all of a sudden speaking English. And they have it's about having free will. Like I saw someone talk about what they should do for it. And I'm like, so just do Barbie again. So they're just gonna do Barbie again. I'm not against them doing Barbie again, but like, all right.
Not if they change it slightly.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know. Just have all the characters speak Simlish. That's the one thing.
Wabba, Wabba Knob gay.
I'm, I don't I don't know Simlish enough to participate in this. Uba
I
Baba
mean,
Dabe.
Wakna Bababushki. You just say gibberish.
Um, apparently, Jordan. Apparently, they're making a League of Legends MMO, which I was like, you know what? That's kind of yeah. I'm surprised they haven't done it before. And apparently it's restarted development. It's still several years off. I just don't know. Is there like a market, or is there a thirst or a desire for MMOs anymore? Like, are people still? I guess some people are still playing World of Warcraft,
I
but like,
think. Well, I think the MMO has kind of, for some of them anyways, gone to the way of the console. So like your Final Fantasy one is on console, and
yeah,
ones like that. So maybe, but or like Destiny and Destiny 2.
yeah, those
Um.
are MMO-esque, but
So
they're first-person shooter first, MMO
yeah,
second.
but they are technically an MMO.
You argued
So
for years that they weren't, and I was like, no, it's an MMO,
yeah,
and you're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, it is. It's an MMO.
it is, but not. I was never able to articulate what I really meant. It wasn't in the way of like what I view an MMO, which is like World of Warcraft, the Old Republic.
Yeah, those are
Uh,
MMORPGs.
Sure, but that's what that in the day that's what I meant, and that's what I was trying to articulate. Anyways, uh in the way that they used to, I mean, from what I understand, they're still charging the same price for World of Warcraft that they have for like what 20 years now. So
Have they? At one point, I heard it went up, and people were pissed.
I can't speak to that,
I remember it was
but
like what was it like $12 a month? It wasn't much. No, $20 a month. We had to buy the cards, and it was a pain in the ass.
I want to say the cards were 25.
Were they 25? Are they that high? I know they were at least. I feel like they were at least 20.
I don't know. I don't remember
And it
well
was
enough.
it was 60 days. It was 60 days. It wasn't a month. The cards were 60 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like 20, like basically $30 for 60 days, which it would have been $15 a month if we used a credit card.
Yeah, it was cheaper if you did it with, like the automated, and we were always like, nah, for the cards, and the cards were more expensive.
Yeah.
Apparently,
Anyway,
apparently,
we've gone off on a side
um,
tangent
apparently, Stephen Moffat is coming back
to
to
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. Yeah,
Yeah, I
everyone's just
heard
coming
about
back,
that.
but he's only coming back to like write one episode apparently. Um,
Yeah.
but it'll be interesting to see if that does that mean we're gonna see Stephen Moffat characters and elements come back, and which ones will we see come back? Like, does that mean we could potentially see? Because Karen Gillan has always sort of indicated that she's willing to go back. Same with
Yeah, I
all those
mean,
guys.
it would be neat if like even if he doesn't write those episodes, if like he gives his blessing to use some of his stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, he like
But
they brought back some of his stuff before, like when they brought back Weeping Angels, because Weeping Angels is all him. He wrote that episode. He created
okay.
yeah. So
I stand by
so it's
I
not
stand by what I just said though.
he's not against having people use his elements. So yeah, that's where I'm like, if he's writing an episode, then yeah, for sure, I would love to see. I would like to see like this be a tour of like him going back to old shit and like dealing with it and um. But yeah, that's interesting to me. Um, apparently, um, sorry. Apparently that small. Well, I don't know if you know this, but there's talks they want to make a Smallville animated series, which by the sounds of it would basically be an adaptation of the Smallville comics. Um,
Why?
well, because with the Smallville, I mean, do you know what the Smallville comics are?
Never heard of him.
They're basically season 11, so it takes place after Smallville, and it's the Smallville Superman basically. And it's about him being Superman. So that's what theoretically I suppose the show would be about, because we never get to see Tom Welling as Superman, and he's never putting on the costume. So this would be your opportunity to finally get to see that version of the character be Superman, and see that version of him be a fully realized Lex Luthor. And they've always said like that's the only way that he's coming back. And I don't know, I'm not against it. I like Smallville. I like that version of the character. Um,
I would be okay with it only if Lex Luthor came back.
yeah, him and Tom Welling are making it. They're like producing
Uh,
it. Yeah, and he's hoping to
All right,
pitch it
all
to
right.
James Gunn.
I'll give it a shot then.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra. I didn't watch like the trailer sort of in it. I skimmed it because I'm not really overly interested in the story. As weird as that sounds, I'm more interested in the gameplay and what that's gonna look like. But based on this story trailer, it seems like you're playing. It was weird when it was initially announced. They said that there's gonna be three playable characters: Captain America, um, the
Black Panther.
Black Panther, and then a human character, like just a regular soldier. And by this trailer, it seems like they've changed the premise of this, so it's no longer the three characters; it's just the two, which I said was better because I was like, why would you play as a regular human soldier when you could play as Black
Yeah.
Panther or Captain America? So it seems like it's gonna do a thing of like it's gonna bounce between them.
But he does in the trailer, he also mentions how there's a third super soldier, which I assume is Red Skull. So it would be kind of neat if you bounce between Captain America, Black Panther, and Red Skull.
That'd be pretty neat. But that's not what the idea seemed to be. But man, does it look pretty! I
Yeah.
took when I saw the clip of the confrontation between Captain America and Black Panther, and I was like, wow. I thought it was. I didn't. It took me a minute to realize it was animation. Like, took me like a
Yeah,
strong
nice.
second to be like, oh shit, that's animated. Yeah, it's made by the
Um,
guys who made Uncharted.
oh, interesting.
So yeah,
My first thing when I watched the bit of it that I watched that I thought was my excitement level is going to be entirely dependent on is this going to be a another like Guardians of the Galaxy where it's single player and it's story based
yeah.
and it's fun, or are we getting another Avengers which is going to be bad?
Well, it's weird. A lot of the comments I saw were like, "Is this going to be a card game?" And clearly that's in reference to something, but I can't. I have no idea what. Um,
Why would you think it would be a card game? What in that trailer would make you think that it's a card
I
game?
think I
That's
think it's a reference um, to the Midnight Suns game, which had really pretty looking cutscenes, but was just like a strategy based adventure game. And it was. So but I don't know. I have no idea. I could not figure out where that comment was coming from. If it's being made by the people who make Uncharted, my guess is it's going to be a third-person action game, which that sounds fun. Third-person action
that
game.
would be that would be fun.
Yeah, if it's made by the people who did Uncharted, then yeah, then it's going to be a narrative-heavy third-person action game. Which
Didn't Naughty Dog make Uncharted?
yeah, but it's like they no longer
Well,
these
then
guys used to work for Naughty Dog. I think they don't work for Naughty Dog anymore.
okay.
So it's not Naughty Dog, not Naughty Dog who's making it. I don't believe. I don't believe it's being made by Naughty Dog. Hold on.
Because when you say it's made by the people that made Uncharted, I'm like, well, that's Naughty Dog.
No, like specifically like the director who not the company but the director is being directed by the guy who did Uncharted.
Ah, well, that's different.
I think I don't honestly know. It just says this article just says that it's in the Unreal Engine, which it is, and it looks pretty. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it does.
I wasn't initially all that excited for it, but to be fair, I'm never all that into anything with Black Panther. I like Captain America, and I would play like an Uncharted style game where you just play as Captain America, but I'm sort of indifferent to the Black Panther part of it.
It definitely comes across like they feel that they need to pair him up with someone.
Yeah, yeah, they wanted to do a Black Panther game, and they were too scared to. It does give me that vibe, yeah. Because they're just not
Yeah.
two characters who go together, but someone clearly went, well, it's during
Not
World War
really.
II. But maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a big enough Captain or a big enough Captain America guy or a Black Panther guy to really strongly be like, no, they don't work together. But
Yeah.
I need
yeah.
to see gameplay. I wanted to see gameplay. Like we know that Marvel can make a decent story out of a video game. Like I still maintain that the Avengers game story is good because the gameplay is kind of lacking. Doesn't mean the story's not good. And the Guardians of the Galaxy game story was really good. So like we know that they can do good story in video games. For me, it's 100% about the gameplay. That's all I care about.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Plus, there's Spider-Man 1,
Yeah, yeah,
which has a really solid story.
yeah. Apparently they're making a live action Popeye movie. Apparently it's being made by Churnin Entertainment and King Features.
Again?
That it will be a big budget feature, and there have been no details or casting information released yet.
So, okay. Okay, so I'm not like I want to preface this with I'm not inherently against that idea, but do kids nowadays know who Popeye is?
I mean,
I have a loose understanding of who he is. You know, big muscly arm guy who eats spinach, but I don't really know a lot of the details about his like his actual like characters and world and lore. My only perception of him is through like Family Guy and stuff, where it's like, yeah, big armed guy eats spinach.
yep, and
But
yes,
like this is presumably like a kids movie, right? A
I
kids movie,
assume, or
right?
family movie, yeah.
So, do families and kids nowadays know who Popeye is?
Not in live action form. I don't think it works. They've been trying to make an animated movie for literally years. At one point, and you can look it up. The person, their name is confusing gender wise, but the person who made Jendi Tartakovsky, the person who made Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack, Hotel Transylvania.
But like even in animated form, like presuming this is made for young people, like 8 to 12-year-olds, whatever.
You did, hold on.
Would they be able to sit down,
Let me.
look at an animated version of Popeye, and be like, oh boy, Popeye?
You didn't let me finish. My point was that it being animated hides the lack of familiarity with the franchise as a whole. So as long as you dumb it down and you make it like you put in fart jokes and you make it bright and colorful, theoretically, and you put in the correct cast of famous celebrity voice cast, theoretically, yeah, it would be successful if it were animated. I think it stands less of a chance of being successful if it's live action. But I think it stands a chance of being successful if it's anime. But also by that same token, there's a reason why no studio has ever picked this up. Right? Like there's an animated short that you can look up, and it's really good, and it looks like Hotel Transylvania, and it looks good. But studios have never picked it up, probably for that exact reason. They've been like, who cares about Popeye?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
What kids nowadays are even gonna know who he is?
There's a reason why they've never managed to get one of these movies off the ground. Disappointing. Sorry, I pulled up this article about Brightburn. Wait, have you seen Brightburn?
I don't recognize it by name.
That's the one where it's a horror movie, and it's what if Superman was evil.
I want to say I have, but I'm not confident enough to put money on it.
I know that I told the twins to watch it and they liked it. Anyway, James Gunn has said that he gave an update on it and on the sequel Brightburn 2, and I pulled open the article hoping that it would be him being like, yeah, it's coming out, and no, he says they're probably not making it, which is disappointing because I always felt like that was an underutilized universe. They should have had like an evil Justice League, and there's at the end of it they hint at like that universe has like an Aquaman and a Wonder Woman, and like I think that would have been kind of an interesting universe. And then James Gunn could take that character and have him fight Superman, his version of Superman. I think that would be fun because his brother directed or produced. He produced it, and his brother directed it. I think, if I recall correctly. And
Interesting.
It's quite a good movie. Oh yeah, so remember how last week we were talking about The Cat in the Hat?
Yeah.
Apparently they've announced it will be led by Bill Hader. And it's got a bunch of names that you don't know by name. And it is apparently they've apparently announced the synopsis, which is in the wonderfully whimsical tradition of Dr. Seuss, The Cat in the Hat comes to the screen in a big animated theatrical feature film, doing what he does best, spreading joy to the happyless kids. To cheer up Paris. Oh yeah, no, it is. It's just an adaptation of the book. That's all it is. That's what they're doing. Interesting. It was a light news week this week. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it depends on who's doing the animation. I think you're right. I think that they should let Illumination. Though I think we said last week it was done by Warner Brothers. But yeah, they should have let Illumination do it.
Yeah, and then you could have had the Cat in the Hat and the Grinch come together for an epic fight to the death.
And do the Grinch is the Cat in the Hat.
This is what they say. Fight to the death.
Anyway, yeah, it was a light. I'm looking at my notes, seeing if there's anything else worth. It was a light news week. There wasn't a ton to talk about. Um, there wasn't, yeah, there wasn't a ton of stuff news wise. So we're just gonna move right along. We're gonna move right along.
Moving right along.
Um, to the sponsorship section. Now, we're gonna be talking about Kamen Rider series today, Jordan. And one of the themes of mine is dreams and living out your dreams. And one of my dreams, Jordan, is to travel to Japan and sit in a movie theater and watch a movie based on one of these series that we're going to be talking about today without subtitles in Japanese. Jordan, if I wanted to do that, who would be the person that I could contact in order to do that?
I mean, it would be our sponsor of the day, Flight Center by Susan.
Flight Center by Susan, Jordan. You can, if you click the link in our, if you want to travel, and you have an idea of where you want to go, where you want to travel, but you're like, I'm stressed out, and there's just, it seems very overwhelming. You can click the link in our description, and go and check her out, to talk to her, communicate with her, contact her, and she will do all of the work for you. She can
She will take the stress off
your and she could book anything related to travel for you, from hotels to car rentals, flights, cruises, guided tours, all-inclusive resorts. And she recently has in fact booked clients to Japan, the very theme of the episode we're talking about today.
I
And
mean,
she could do
it's
group bookings
fitting.
of any size. Sorry.
Very fitting.
Very
appropriate.
Very thematically relevant to the episode today. And if you book over a certain amount, there is incentivization in it for you. If you book over a certain amount, she will give you a gift card. She will give you a gift card that you can use, any gift card you'd like. You can tell her what you would like to use it for, and she will get that for you if you book over a certain amount. So she recently booked a client that lives in Canada, got a Tim Hortons gift card simply for booking with her. And she's helped us. She's helped us book. She's made the entire process completely stress-free. She does all the work, and she takes care of everything for you. She stresses ultimately, so you don't have to. So again, that's Flight Center by Susan. You just click the link in her description. Also, make sure you tell them that the Spur of the Moment podcast sent you. Or if you want to, you could just say Justin and Jordan sent you. She'll know what you mean. But that's, again, Flight Center by Susan. Thanks to her for sponsoring this episode. On with the show, Jordan.
On with the show, Justin.
So, we're moving into book reports. And book reports are going to be structured a little differently today. As always, Jordan is going to go first. Jordan, I would like you to do the non-Sentai or Kamen Rider-related one first.
Roger. Okay, well, that's not the right Wikipedia page. I think that's the one I want. Sorry. The first one
sorry,
for me...
Real quick up top, sorry. There is a disclaimer. We're going to fuck up pronunciations. I apologize to any Japanese people who might be listening to this. We're not going to get it right. Okay? Don't at me. Continue, sorry.
I mean, luckily, the first one is very easy to not fuck up because it's called Battle Royale. It's basically, bunch of high schoolers, ninth graders in Japan, in this world. There's a law. They're crazy, and so they all get shipped to this island to kill each other off. There's lots of death. It's gratuitous. It's a good time.
It's a good time. It's a variation of Hunger Games, essentially. But it's not.
Except
there's no TV
except
part
like
of it.
1,000% more violent.
Yeah. It's got the guy. If you've seen the live action Death Note movie, he plays the main character. And,
Apparently, it has an R15 rating, which is rarely used in Japan.
Yeah. They don't like their. But to be fair, their idea, and we'll talk about it, but their idea of violence is drastically different than.
Wow. It had a budget of $4.5 million, and the box office was $30.6 million.
Yeah, it's because it's one of those rare times where it got released internationally, and it made a shit ton of money internationally because international audiences really liked it. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, in the structure of this, I find, and it ties into to one of my stuff, but were there characters who they were so immediately and cartoonishly evil, you were just like, they're gonna die first?
Well, I mean, he didn't die first, but the cartoonishly evil one for me is the in this is the teacher.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's over the top. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, there were ones that I would have thought would have, but then they lived longer than I like. I can't remember the character's name. The one that has the sickle.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I would have thought that she would have died earlier, but she lives for quite a while. Um, there's ones where it's like I kind of wish they had lived longer because it would have been interesting to see like their thing come to fruition. So like the ones that made all the bombs, but then the dude with the gun comes and kills them before they can blow up the school. And it's like it would have been interesting to see how that would have played out.
Yeah, that one's fun because the first time I watched it was at home, but we watched it one time on the big screen, and it's a
Yeah.
really good movie to watch on the big screen.
I think that was the first time I watched it was on the big screen.
Yeah, I took you. I'm like, you're gonna like this movie. We need to go watch it, and it was good.
It was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Japanese, they're so over the top in their in their acting. They emote so well. So like
Oh
drama for
yeah.
them is like dialed up to 11, and that was definitely one.
It
Um,
kind of makes everything, like even their live action stuff, kind of feel like an anime.
yeah, 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 yeah. And again, we're gonna obviously talk about that. Um, but what's something else I want to know about Battle
Wow, this was
Royale?
released that late or that wow, I didn't realize this was that old. This was released theatrically in Japan on December 16th, 2000.
Oh, interesting, interesting. I didn't realize it was. I thought I could have sworn that was like 2005. I thought it was much newer than that.
It Anchor Bay Films eventually acquired the film in 2010 for a direct-to-video release. Worldwide, it grossed blah 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 blah. It looks like it wasn't released worldwide until like 2009
Interesting, interesting,
ish, something like that is the gist of what I'm reading here.
interesting. Huh, huh.
It
Interesting.
was also apparently the last film to be fully directed by Kinji Fukasaku, who started working on the sequel, but died of prostate cancer on December 12th, 2003,
Interesting.
after shooting only one scene.
Huh. Who was he?
And
Oh,
then,
he
he,
was the director.
and
Right,
then,
right, right.
and then his son finished the film.
Huh. Huh. Interesting. And yeah, I think there's two sequels. I know there's at least one sequel, and it's apparently bad, from what I've heard.
I only see the one, and yeah,
Basically,
apparently it was not received well,
no.
which could be because the son directed it and not the father.
Oh, interesting. I know that the main guy comes back, and from what I recall, it basically becomes I think it was the you remember the Hunger Games movie where it's like the 75th annual bullshit games.
Yeah,
It's basically
yeah,
that. It's like an all-star game where they bring back a bunch of winners.
interesting. I just know that from what I read, the guy, like the main guy from the first one, comes back to try and basically like end it all, make it
Yeah,
stop.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've heard it's not very. I've never had an
Are
interest
you
in
still
watching it.
there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm still here.
Hello?
Jordan,
I'm not.
Jordan.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, now you were there. I just got a chipmunk version of you talking all at once,
Whoa, that was weird.
and the stream paused for a second.
Oh, weird. Oh man, just once. Once I'd like to get through this without any technical issues. Anyway.
So it's on my screen. It was lagging for a bit there, so that might pop up, but
Oh,
whatever.
whatever. Anyway, do you have anything interesting or more you'd like to say about Battle Royale?
I mean, other than the fact that it's gratuitously violent. Uh, it's great. It's one that I would recommend, and apparently, oh, maybe that's the version I watched. Interesting. Um, there was a special edition of the film that was released after the original, which has 8 extra minutes. Yeah, that would explain it. 8 extra minutes of running time. Um, and the extra material scenes are the ones that I saw anyway. Are like basically like after the movie they just play.
Oh.
Um, so you've got flashbacks to a basketball game, which is used as a framework for the entire story. Flashback that expands on a likely contributor to Mitsuko Suma's mental illness or sociopathy. Sociopathy. She comes home from school to find her mother drunk with a strange man who tries to molest her. She then pushes him down the staircase. That's the one with the sickle.
Oh, gotcha.
Um, Three epilogues, referred to as requiems. The first is an extension of the basketball scene, showing the students of Class 3B winning their game. It also spotlights Mitsuko's apparent social anxiety and alienation from classmates in 3B. The second is a vision of Nobu telling Shuya to take care of Noruko, a replay of the hallucination seen earlier. And the third is a scene between the one girl and the teacher who are talking casually on a riverbank.
Interesting.
Parts of it do appear in the original film, but the dialogue in the original film is muted. Whereas in the Requiem, it's audible and reveals a friendship between the teacher and the student.
Huh.
And then there's some additional other shots as well.
Huh. Huh.
So the version I watched had those scenes,
Interesting.
which I was interested because I was like, I don't remember these. This is different than I don't remember these scenes being here in the credits.
Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Is there anything else you'd
Other
like
than
to?
that, no, that's I mean, other
Battle
than like
Royale?
I said, it's pretty gratuitous.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a thought-provoking movie. It's definitely worth watching. There isn't much to talk about plot-wise, simply because it's
No,
exactly
I
what you
would say
think it is.
I would call it a combination between Hunger Games and The Purge
Yeah. I can see why you would see The Purge. Yeah, very similar to The
in
Purge.
in terms of violence level and like gratuityness.
Yeah, and deciding that the only way to solve society's problems is by murdering each other.
Kill them off.
Kill 'em
Gotta
off.
get them gone.
Um, but yeah, there's less of an emphasis on the media element of it, like with Hunger Games and my show we're going to be talking about in a bit. That's very much about the spectatorship of it and watching it and like detaching yourself from the emotionality of it by being like it's just a show. Whereas like Battle Royale, I think it happens secretly and the general public doesn't know about it.
It's basic. Well, it is a thing that the general public knows that a class might be chosen, but they never know which one, and it's on a hidden island. And no, it's not like a spectator thing. It's like, yeah, no, this is to teach the youth a lesson. Like they
Yeah,
need to learn respect for adults.
yeah, which
It's
is so.
more about the point, like the point of it than the
Yeah.
spectatorship of it.
And it's weird because it's like you would think it'd be like a deterrent thing, like these kids would want it, but no, they don't. If I remember correctly, they don't find out that they're going to be part of the battle royale until they get there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it's like you'd think you'd want if it's supposed to be a deterrent thing, or if it's supposed to
You'd think it'd be
like
a scared straight kind of thing.
yeah, it'd be a thing like you'd want them to know that there's a chance that they could wind up there. You'll be good, or you'll wind up, you know, on an island
Yeah.
murdering each other. But no, you don't
The,
find
bo-
it.
the boogeyman will get you.
Yeah, it's a weird lesson that they're teaching retroactively. It's what I find strange about that movie. It's like, yeah, these kids learn that one person learns about this thing, and it's like, what is it? If it's a secret thing, what is it teaching? It just feels like you say gratuitous.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, good movie though.
yeah, but with that, we begin in this much shorter in part two of our epic two-part or season premiere. In our shorter second part because this episode's going to be shorter. I could already tell looking at the timer. We begin our journey with Super Sentai. Now, but for those of you who may not know what Super Sentai is, who are listening to this or who are watching to this later. Watching to this later? That wasn't English. Anyway, if you're familiar
You've been watching too much Japanese.
yeah, if you're familiar with Power Rangers, Sentai is essentially Japanese Power Rangers. It's the series that Power Rangers is adapted from, showing their kids' violence. Now, one of the things Jordan had selected that he had seen before is the 35th anniversary Super Sentai movie. It's based on Goseiger and Gokaiger. For those of you who are American, you would know this as Megaforce and Super Megaforce. Jordan?
I'm having real trouble hearing you. It's doing the and our stream keeps doing the spinny ball of death.
What the hell? That's very strange. Why is that doing that? I don't
It's
know.
fine now,
We're just
but it was for like when I was having the issues hearing you, it was doing the spinning ball of death.
okay. Let's try this again. What was the last thing you heard?
Pretty much you started talking about it being pirate and Power Rangers and Megaforce and
Okay. So, let's try this again. Man, this episode has been difficult. Anyway, Super Sentai. Okay. The one that Jordan
Go
picked.
Tiger, Go Tiger, Super Sentai 199, Hero Great Battle.
Yes. So, those of you in America would know that it's Super Mega Force or Mega Force. And this is the 35th anniversary movie. Very roughly, Jordan, what is it about? This movie in particular.
Bad enemy army shows up to destroy Earth. All the Gokaiger come together to get rid of, or not Gokaiger, Sentai come together to get rid of evil aliens. Many years later, aliens return. Pirate Sentai show up with all powers of original Sentai members. Angel Sentai steal their powers back. They team up to fight against the evil bad guys. And then
Gotcha.
at the end of it, they're like, "You guys are the heroes now," and they hand off their powers back to the pirate guys.
Yeah. So traditionally, every summer, there's every Sentai and Kamen Rider series has what's known as a summer movie and a crossover movie. This was the Ghost Sagers crossover movie. So this is technically speaking their movie. And yeah, it's a sorry.
Interestingly, apparently, according to Wikipedia, you remember how we were like, when exactly does this take place? This movie takes place between episodes 16 and 17 of Gokaiger.
Yes. And then there's another episode that takes place during the plots of the crossover movie with Shinkenger, which is Power Ranger Samurai. And you actually see them show up for their cameo, and their cameo is they're literally like they appear on a cliffside, and they're like, "We're Gokaiger, we're the new guys," and and there's an episode that literally shows how they got there for that exact moment.
But I thought that was interesting.
But much like we'll do an entire Sentai episode another time. Where this is kind of a sneak preview. We're gonna come back to this topic, and Jordan's gonna talk about Gokaiger in more depth, and I'm gonna pick my own Sentai show. And we'll go into a bit more history about the history of Sentai and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah, we can't go into great depth of that today. Today's Kamen Rider Day. That's next time.
That's next time, yeah. But it's very fun, and if you're a Power Rangers fan, it's fun to just see all these Power Rangers styles, and it's a certain level of violent, and it's just a fun movie, and it's easy. I think you can watch it without any knowledge of any of this. It's a great when people are like entry point. Yeah, Jordan did. When people are like, "Oh, what's a good entry point?" That's a good entry point.
Well, it's like even as a person who I don't know what half of these the Sentai are, but even just as a person who grew up with Power Rangers, there's something inherently fun about seeing all of these dorky guys in suits fighting together and knowing that it's like, oh yeah, each of these was its own series. Yeah. I don't know them, but I know that each of these was its own series.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's something cool about that.
Absolutely, and there's so many of them. There's so many of them, especially by that point.
There's 199 of them. That's why this is called Sentai 199 Great Hero Battle.
Yeah, and there's even more now because that was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But overall, would you? This is again. We're gonna come back. We're gonna do a full bore Sentai episode. We'll talk about some of the history of Sentai. We'll talk about some of the differences between it and Power Rangers. But did this make you want to go in and watch Gokaiger, the whole series?
Yeah, I mean, I've wanted to watch the full pirate one for a while, and I've needed a reason or an excuse to do so. This podcast is an excuse, but as we learned from this experience, I demand more time.
Yeah, it was mistakes were made. I will acknowledge that mistakes were made. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it, though?
I would like to watch more of these ones because Yeah, there's something fun about watching the one people have the power to use all the other people's powers. That's
Yeah.
that the fact that the Power Ranger version of it dropped the ball so hard on that, on such a simple fucking concept, will never not be a disappointment to me.
Yeah.
But this is the version where it came from, and it works better and it's good. So yes, I would like to watch more of it.
Um, one of them. Um, so I watched two. We'll do my first one. We'll do because one of them I think I'm gonna defer because it has to do with your Kamen Rider. And there's some stuff I want to talk about with that. But one of the ones I watched, unless there's anything further you have to say about.
It's a pretty basic movie. My subjects here are going to be very simple this week.
Yeah, I know. This is gonna be like an hour and 15
Justin,
minute podcast.
hello,
Jordan,
hello.
Jordan,
You are frozen again.
hold on. Can you hear me now? Oh my God,
I
what is
can hear you
wait?
now.
Ah.
You keep freezing,
Ugh, I think you're what's happening
and
to
then
you.
and then every time you freeze, the stream freezes.
Of course, I think what's happening is remember how you kept freezing that one time. That's happening. It's now happening to you. What happened to me?
Maybe.
And
All I know is that it appears that the stream pauses every time.
it's
So
so frustrating. Oh well. It's just oh well. So for
we'll
those of you
find
listening,
out once this is
oh no,
we'll
if
find
it's
out once this is done whether it's actually showing up or
oh
not, or
it's
if it's
it's
just not.
actually it's probably absolutely freezing. Last time it did, it was, so it wouldn't surprise me. Oh well, it's just the poor people on Spotify who listen. They're gonna get like you going, Justin, hello, hello. um, yeah, part of the byproduct of live television. We could pre-record these and we wouldn't have these issues. Um, but it would lose something anyway. Um, so I moving into the stuff I had seen, I wanted to try and cover as much of a sort of variety of these as I could, and I ran out of time. So, um, turns out trying to squeeze 48 episodes. We'll get there. We'll get there. Anyway, so the first thing I watched this morning. I watched Space Sheriff Gavan. Gavan. Um, Space Sheriff Gavan is part of the Metal Hero series. So, in terms of age demographics, um, Super Sentai skews for 5 to 6 year olds, 7-year-olds. Kamen Rider is like 7 to 8-year-olds, and then Space Sheriff Gavin is for teenagers, like preteen teenagers. So it's more violent, it's more explicit, and it's a lot. There's a lot more explosions and sparks and stuff. So like, Space Sheriff Gavin, at least this movie anyway, it's a sequel to the original series where it's basically it's what it sounds like. It's a guy who he's a space cop. He's a cop from space and he's fighting a bunch of, like any of these shows, costume monsters. But in this case, they're a gang of evil alien gangsters. And the original Space Sheriff Gavin destroyed the big boss guy and banished him to an alternate dimension. They're called the Maku. And this one is at its core about three people, a man, two men, and a woman who are all childhood friends. And they promised each other that they would go to space one day. And the two of them, the new guy Geki and his friend, they go into space and they get attacked by something. And one of them becomes Space Sheriff Gavin, and his whole thing is like a robot-looking guy, and they're trying to prevent the Maku from coming back. And his friend gets mind whammied by the Maku, and the opening scene, not opening scene, but like one of the opening scenes of this, the bad guy shows up and like skewers this guy, just like impales him on his thing, and it's like blood everywhere. And I'm like, oh, this isn't for the kiddies. This is violent, and it's very much it, for whatever reason. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Metal Hero, Jordan, you would know it as you remember VR Troopers.
But I don't really remember watching it.
Do you remember Big Bad Beetleborgs?
Again, I recognize the name, but I don't remember ever watching it.
Those are adaptations of Metal Hero. So they're different series that were adapted to different things. But yeah, they're a lot harder to adapt for kids because in Japan they're not so much for kids. But this one desperately, it's funny because Toei is constantly trying to make the Metal Hero franchise come back. So like he just shows up in like random things. So when you do watch Gokaiger eventually, he's in that. He's been in a bunch of the movies, and this movie is very much trying to set up a show that never came out. So like the whole plot of it is he's trying to become the new Gavin, and the old Gavin shows up and just slaps him in the face a bunch. That's his idea of training, and it's exactly what you think it is. They fight alien guys, and the thing about these shows is that they sort of live or die on their suit design, and the suit designs are good. The relationship between the three main characters works, and you could absolutely watch it and not be familiar with the franchise as a whole. But with that, we're gonna jump into the main topic of this episode, and the main thing that
you only had one. You only had one that you've seen.
I have another one, but it's tied to yours, so I'm gonna defer it.
Oh, okay.
It is
okay.
It is technically a sequel, or it takes place during. Anyway, so for the main topic of today's episode, the main meat and beef and cheese of it is gonna be we're gonna be talking about Kamen Rider. We're gonna be talking about
Kamen Rider.
Jordan will be talking about Kamen Rider Forze. I will be talking
Kamen
about
Rider Forze.
I will be talking about Kamen Rider Geats. And first, background of Kamen Rider. Let's start with the background first. Kamen Rider, for those who don't know, is another show that's very similar to Power Rangers. It's about a costume masked hero who he has a device and he transforms into a hero. The difference between Kamen Rider or Power Rangers and Sentai is instead of being a full team of people, it is typically one guy. Sometimes it turns into two guys, like there'll be a second guy that comes in about midway. When did yours come in? About midway?
Yeah, probably midway-ish. About 20 something.
About midway.
18 or 20.
Yeah. Very rarely you will have it where there's, like in my show, where there's multiple riders. Sometimes you get a series, and a lot of modern Kamen Rider, because they want to sell more toys, they will do like 5 or 6 riders. We're going to get into that more. But Kamen Rider came out 1971. It's been around since about 1971. And one of the things I watched that I had seen before, which I said I was going to defer, is called Kamen Rider X Super Sentai Superhero Tyson. Because the block, named after the block of television where these shows air, is called Superhero Tyson. And there's a block of television that they air every Saturday. And what's interesting, and it's a weird coincidence, it's funny that you picked the Gokaiger movie, and it's a weird coincidence I gave you Forze, because Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, they are paired with the Sentai. So Forze aired at the same time as Gokaiger. And then eventually about midway through the year, it'll switch. So one of them will switch.
In the Superhero Time lineup.
Yeah. So what happens is, so for the first chunk of the year, it was Kamen Rider, Forze, and Gokaiger, and then for the second half of the year, it was Kamen Rider, Forze, and Go Busters, and then eventually Forze ends, and then it'll be Go Busters and Wizard, who comes after Forze, and so they kind of work together. So they'll sort of promote each other's shit in commercials, and so Superhero Tyson, the entire concept of it was it's basically the Avengers. Really, it's really similar to Infinity War, but for Kamen Rider and Super Sentai. So the entire premise of it is, who wins in a fight, Super Sentai or Kamen Rider? And for me, it's always been like, it's not really much of a discussion point, because Super Sentai can just kind of summon giant robots. Like most of the people involved in that can just summon giant. For most of the run of that series, they could summon giant robots. Like, not the entire run. Like, it's not as like early on as you would think, but fairly early on. But what's interesting is there's a line in Superhero Tyson where a character says that if not for the Kamen Riders, the Super Sentai would, if not for the Kamen Riders getting their slot, the Super Sentai would have never gotten their slot. And that's a reference to the fact that Kamen Rider came out first. And they wanted to make another show that was equally as successful. So the same guy who created Kamen Rider also created Super Sentai. And the concept being, and the difference being that it would be about teams as opposed to an individual guy. So, do you like Power Rangers, Jordan?
Yeah.
You could thank Kamen Rider for that, because if not for Kamen Rider, there is no Power Rangers. So
Very interesting.
yeah, and so when it comes to Kamen Rider, there are typically two flavors of Kamen Rider. There is stoic, but a dick is it stoic but serious, or idealistic but goofball. You've got idealistic but goofball, and your secondary rider is stoic but serious. My main rider,
Yep.
stoic but serious. One of my secondary riders, silly but idealistic. So with that, what is Kamen Rider Forze's gimmick? What is it? What is it? What is his gimmick? His theme? What is his theming? And what is his gimmick?
Well, the theming is space, which apparently was what the theming was for both the 40th anniversary and the 50th anniversary. Space flight, space, that sort of thing.
Really?
And the gimmick is, yeah, according to Wikipedia. The gimmick is switches.
Yeah.
So they switch between the different powers and abilities and
Yeah.
thingamajigs.
And so what is the premise of your opening section of Kamen Rider Forze? Not the whole thing. We're just gonna start with the opening section.
Opening section is a kind of a bad guy of the week, if you will, or of the day, where the Zodiarts, the teachers are giving students the switches, which turn them into the Zodiart monsters.
We don't know that yet. We don't. Oh yeah, sorry. I should mention also, we're gonna spoil the shit out of these shows. That's not in your opening. You don't know that it's the teachers immediately, do you?
Yeah, I seem to remember we do pretty immediately on.
Isn't it like it's a mystery of who the main bad guys are for like a little bit? I remember there being more of a mystery.
I mean, maybe the first couple episodes, but I remember it being pretty quick on. Not the girl teacher, that's a while, but you find out pretty early on that like there's the old guy who's the chancellor, and there's the like his monsters and stuff. But you see the old guy chancellor.
Basically, it starts off. See, mine is very deliberately separated into arcs. So I should ask, what is the premise of your series generally? Like, what is it about? Not specifically, but generally.
Generally, it's about bad evil boss guy who's Sagittarius. He wants to have his warriors show up so that he can go deep into space and find the predecessors. And he's going to do whatever it takes to get that.
Again, you don't know that right away. So what Kamen Rider Forze is about? It's about
that's what it's about. It's about he's trying to get the powers.
Right, but again, that's not the premise. The premise is it's about Gentaro.
Yes,
Kasari.
it is.
Hold on, let me finish. It's about Gentaro Kasari, and he winds up and transfers to a new school called ASG. And while he's there, he discovers that there's an underground group of people who are influencing the students by giving them switches, which turns them into monsters. He becomes Kamen Rider Forze by meeting two of the students there, and he transforms into Kamen Rider Forze and fights these Zodiarts. And there's a mystery about exactly who the Zodiarts are and what they want. That's very basically what Kamen Rider Forze is about. Now, Kamen Rider.
I mean, you said not to go into too much detail. I didn't go into that much detail.
Kamen Rider.
You wanted me to go into that much detail. I could have gone into detail.
Kamen Rider Geats, basically is about this game. It's called the Dream. Oh shit! I completely forgot the name of it. But basically, it's a Grand Prix, the Dream Grand Prix, and a bunch of regular people get recruited to participate in this game, which is effectively Battle Royale, but with Kamen Riders. And they all participate, or actually, really, it's more like Squid Games with Kamen Riders, because they all participate in various games. Oh, my bad guys are called the Jamato, and they're kind of plant-like based creatures, and they all get recruited by these producers, these people, and they get dropped into these various games where it's like the Jamato will be one side and they'll be the other side, and they have to defeat them, and they're also competing against each other to survive and succeed and win this game, and whoever wins this game gets their big dream granted. They get to make their quote ideal world, as it were. And the first major arc is really just about this first game. There's multiple riders. So for my series, there's like at first there's like 12 riders. And what's kind of cool is the type of rider they are is sort of based on their personality. So it's all animal based. And so like the main guy Geets, he's a like a trickster kind of guy. He's a sneaky, crafty guy. So he's a fox. There's a guy that shows on later on. He's an old man. So he's an owl. He's like a wise old owl. And the main guy, one of the main guys, he's a tanuki. The girl's a cat. And yeah, so the initial episodes are very much about that game. So your first batch of episodes are sort of slowly about finding out. Like, basically, it's a mystery. Jordan, you there? Hello? Jordan? Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
Oh, man, what was happening? Why is we're gonna have to find Discord. Maybe we will have to switch over to Zoom. I don't know, because like Discord has been giving us such trouble. What point did you stop hearing me?
A while back, I was smiling and nodding, hoping it would catch up.
Oh, fuck! This is so frustrating. This episode is going very poorly. Like, all that work, and this is just not working. It's so frustrating. So okay, let's go back. The first section of your series is very basically like each episode is there's a monster, you don't know who they are, and then there's a mystery about figuring out who they are, right?
Well, the characters don't know, but we, the audience, we do. Like, we see the people that are turning into the monsters pretty fast.
Oh, okay.
It's more about the characters that are trying to figure out like who and why, and more. I would say the point is less about in a lot of the episodes anyway, is less about like who is transforming and more why they're transforming and how they can not like make it.
Let's just try it.
Oh, you've just dropped out. Oh, you're back.
Maybe hopefully that'll fix it.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. This week has been the episode of hell.
Yeah, man. Like, so for those of you who don't know, behind the scenes, these shows are 48 episodes apiece, and as it turns out, trying to squeeze 48 episodes into television into it that's exclusively in Japanese is very difficult, because as much as they are
plus
very
two movies,
plus two movies, because as it turns out, there's only so many hours in a week. And it's like you're knocking out like 3 episodes an hour. So like I devoted like this took like 20 hours almost. And like we each have jobs, like day jobs that we have to do, and like other responsibilities that we have to attend to. And you can't just put it on the because I have the attention span of a fucking gnat. I can't just put it on the TV because my attention will focus. And if you're not paying direct attention to it because it's not in English, you lose stuff. Like you lose it. You're like wait. And these shows,
or if you've had a particularly tiring day of work, and the last thing you want to do is come home and read, and reading makes you sleepy, and then you fall asleep, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, shit, I now have to go back 10 episodes because I slept through half of them. And you put yourself back 20 hours, and then you have to spend all of it today doing it.
And then it's
and
like,
then you go to start doing your podcast, and the stupid thing keeps lagging on you, throwing off all momentum. It's just been a hassle, I'm telling you.
It's just like, and like, yeah, again, behind the scenes stuff. Yesterday, I'm doing a thing with the computer, and it refuses to stay on. So I thought, oh, I'll just delete a bunch of stuff off of the computer, and apparently it's made shit worse because it won't stop being laggy for some reason. The thing that's frustrating about this is like we've gone weeks without having a single fucking technical issue, and it happens sporadically, and I don't know if it's Discord, I don't know what it is, but like
Sporadically.
it's so annoying, and yeah, it's throwing off the momentum of this, and like I'm like, I wanted to do this whole big. I had this plan. I thought we could make this go for at least 20 minutes, and that we could turn it into a video. And now the video is going to have this like 2-minute rant in the middle of it where we fucking complain about how aggravating this week has been, and it's such a shame. Sorry.
I was gonna say it's also very funny because there's periods where it's like I can hear you talking in the other room, but your video hasn't caught up with reality yet.
I don't know what
So
to
there's
do.
there's like this huge lag between reality and what's going on my screen. So that's where like whenever you freeze up, I can hear you talking in the other room. I just can't understand what you're saying.
I don't know what to do. I'm almost tempted to just end the stream and restart it.
Oh, I don't want to do that.
I don't know what to do otherwise. Like, yeah, it's gonna make the podcast just sound bad, and whatever. We're gonna plug on. So for me, at a certain point, a second arc kicks in where they finish the first game, right, and then that leads into the second game, which is more or less the first game over again. And the plot of it is now it's season 2. We're doing season 2. Is there a point in your series where it hits a wild turn and now it's about something else?
Kind of. There's a point where so you've got the different stages when it comes to the monsters. You've got the first stage where they're trying to get them to hit their final form or whatever, and then if they're in that final form long enough, then they turn into what is essentially like the lieutenants, which is the 12 zodiac signs. So arc 2 seems to be they now are pretty much just fighting the generals, and that's where like they've got their Super Saiyan form. The meteor has the comet or whatever, the gold and blue one, and Forze has cosmic.
Yeah.
I would say that's arc 2.
Okay,
Personally,
I would agree with that. And for me, like it's what's interesting is like you're right. They tend to have a super form, and going forward from yours, there's a super. You funny call it Super Saiyan, but then there's a Super Saiyan 2 form, which is like the form that's stronger than that super form. That's basically like the combination of all the powers. And Forze doesn't really get one. The closest equivalent would be when he gets, I want to say, lightning. I think it's lightning because that's the one where it's the first time his costume drastically changes.
yeah, that's the first time his costume changes color.
Yeah. And so
So if I were to put it into Dragon Ball Z terms, lightning would be like Kaioken. Fire would be like Kaioken times 10, and then the cosmic would be his Super Saiyan.
Yeah. And it's I just realized because of all the fucking technical distractions, I realized I forgot to mention what my aesthetic and what my theme was. So each of the Kamen Riders in my series. Oh, I should say, generally speaking, I don't like multiple Kamen Riders in a series. Once you get more than 2, it just becomes Sentai or Power Rangers, and I'm like, it's not really why I like them. I like it when it's just the 2 because you get really focused individualization on the Kamen Rider himself. In terms of not so much the character, because there's always side characters, but in terms of his abilities. So the thing I like about Forze is like they have the same like gimmick, but their abilities are different. So like with Forze, he's got their individualism. So like in W, and I see the series that comes before yours, No, the series that comes before yours is O's. But anyway, one of the series that comes before yours, like they both use, um, what are essentially like thumb drives. But his whole thing is he's two guys and one guy, and the other guy he's like motorcycle themed. So his form is like a motorcycle. So it's like they used to have similar power set, but they're different. So with mine, they all have ID cores, which basically that's where all the animals come from. So Geets, he's got a fox one guy's got a tanuki, and another one has the girl has a cat, and they couple that with belt buckles, and they put the belt buckles in, and it gives them the different powers. And each of the belt buckles is like there's a scene which is effectively like for you battle royale. You know how like there's the scene where they give them the bag and they each have the weapon in it.
Yeah.
Or remember in Hunger Games, the quarter quell where they all run in and grab a weapon. The first episode of the show is basically that, where they all run in and they all unlock different abilities, and they're all interchangeable. So like one of the guys, and it's a funny series because you could tell. Okay, the thing about this show is it's still television, so like it becomes certain arcs. And it's a children's television show, so certain arcs become evident early on. And like in the case of a series with multiple riders, you can tell the longer the rider is going to stick around by how detailed his costume is. So there's 3 ones that show up really early on, and they have really detailed costumes. And you're like, well, obviously they're going to be main characters, and they're going to be here the whole time. And then sure as shit, they make it to the end. But like, so the one guy, his one buckle is called Zombie, and like the thing about Kamen Rider ultimately is it's really about aesthetics. So it's about how much do you like the aesthetic, how much do you like the costumes, because if you can't get into the costumes, if you can't enjoy the costume design, you're not going to enjoy the rest of the show. And there's a lot of standout costume designs in yours. Like there's so many. Some of the Zodiacs are so good.
I like a lot of the Zodiacs. I like a lot of the monsters. Borze's helmet, I don't like.
I don't love it in like retro, like compared to like and as I when I eventually do cut this into a video, I'm gonna try to splice in some stuff I want to show you. But I like Geets' design way better. Like just way better. I in retrospect I really liked Forze's design at first because coming from Power Rangers, right? It's different than Power Rangers. I like that about it. And yeah, I get that it's trying to look like a rocket ship. That's its design. But you're right. I don't love the helmet. And he's too his abilities are too bulky looking, in my opinion. It makes some of his fight sequences look clumsy. But that's part of his character, to be fair. That's kind of what makes his character fun.
That's true.
Is he's kind of failing upward. Like a lot of that show is just him failing upward.
In that way, he reminds me of Naruto, or like that Goku. Kind of character.
He reminds me Goku. He reminds me a lot of Goku. I think that's maybe why I like him so much. But yeah, so there's one guy who his belt buckle is called Zombie, and he turns into this purple guy, and he's got like long, like a claw-like hand, and his weapon is a chainsaw sword, and it's fucking sweet.
Dope.
Yeah, it's so fucking dope. And there's so many, like, the back half of this series, so many of the suit designs are just, they're so sleek, and they're so, like, I like my suits when they're a bit more sleek and they're a bit more badass. And the cool thing about Kamen Rider is each of the riders fight differently. So, like, your guy fights differently. Your guy's rough. His fighting style is rough. Mine's a lot more refined because he's been doing this tournament, these games for, like, anyway. So
then Meteor is like a Bruce Lee.
Yeah, Meteor's like a Bruce Lee guy. He complete with a yeah. At one point, he straight up does the 10-inch punch or whatever, and it's fucking badass. So what's your third arc? Would you say there is a third arc?
Third arc is kind of like, okay, we've hit the end game now. It's less about like activating the students and more about like getting the last of the the boss Zodiarts to come out so that he can get their switches, and so that Sagittarius, me, I'm a Sagittarius. That was me. I watched
Sagittarius is
me.
dope as fuck. He's dope as fuck. Like if
Um, so that he can achieve his final ultimate mecha super important cool badass Japanese hey ho final plan.
and yeah, he wants to go. He
Um,
wants to go meet space aliens in space. It's his evil plan.
yeah, at the expense of Japan.
At the expense of Japan. He's a. It's so weird. The one thing about that season is it's weird how many teachers are just perfectly willing to murder students. Like so many of
I
them are just
mean,
cool with killing students.
not just killing students, but seeding out what is essentially drugs
Yeah, yeah,
into their own population.
pretty much, yeah, effectively, yeah. And it's funny because I finished watching the last of it with him, and it's so funny, like when you, and it's a similar thing with my series where, like, people are getting blown up and shot with lasers and like tossed around and hit in the face, and but it's so much more aggressive and violent when they're doing it as people. Like when it's people
Yeah.
fighting each other, you're like, oh, this is off-putting. Like at one point in mine, I mentioned this to you last night, but it still makes me laugh. One of the characters just has a gun. She just has not a Kamen Rider or like space gun, but just like a regular normal person gun and just straight up shoots a guy in the stomach and he's bleeding out. And you're like, man, I understand why this doesn't work in America. So for me, I've got way more arcs to get through. So my third arc. So at the end of the second arc, um, okay, so initially you kind of think that despite being called Kamen Rider Geats isn't really in it a ton. He shows up here and there, and he's kind of in the background, and it's more about this other guy, Kamen Rider Tycoon, and about this Kamen Rider Nago, and it's about them more, and they're more of the main character. And he's the idealistic one. His main dream is he wants to save the world and all that stuff. And there's this sort of mystery about what's the deal with it's Desire Grand Prix, that's what it's called. And there's this sort of what is the deal with the Desire Grand Prix? Because there's a lot of moments where it's like they say, okay, the Jamato are showing up and they're killing and attacking people. And if you compete in this game and you beat enough of them, you'll save the world. And as a bonus, you get to wish for whatever you want, and we reset the world, and the whole thing starts over again. But it's very strange because the Jamato are participating in these games, so like they're following the rules of the game. So like for one of the games they're playing what is essentially a citywide basketball game where the one side has to like get the ball in the hole in the hoop or whatever. And it's like, well, okay, why if this is about stopping the Jamato and it's about saving the world, why are they participating in it? Why are they going along with it? It seems like both sides are in on this. So then at the end of this second arc, towards the end of the second arc, there's sort of three people involved in the show, in the games, I should say. There's the navigator, who is the person who gives the belt and stuff to all the riders and essentially recruits them. And then there's the game master, the game master and the producer. And the game master essentially designs and comes up with the games, and the producer oversees it all. And Kamen Rider Geek starts to ask too many questions. He's basically, it turns out that he's been participating in these games for like a long time and just keeps winning and keeps wishing for all these rules. And at one point he wished that he could continuously just participate in the Desire Grand Prix over and over and over again. Yes.
So certain elements of what you're describing sound very similar to The World Ends With You.
Yeah, that's another close comparison. Yes, absolutely. It's weird because as it goes on, it changes. It starts off as one thing and it changes into a bunch of different things. So then, Kamen Rider Geats, he ultimately, it turns out that he's been doing this for a while, and one of his wishes, he's won a few times, and one of his wishes is that he can just continuously compete in these games. And at the end, he wins the first season, the first game, and his wish at the end of it is that the production of these games will now be his family. So the navigator is his sister, and the game master and concierge is his dad, and he's trying to basically figure out what the deal is with these games and where they came from and what they are. And so the second game happens, and towards the end of it, the game master goes rogue basically and decides that he needs to kill Kamen Rider. He needs to retire Kamen Rider Geats. And effectively what happens is either you die as a Kamen Rider, and if you die, that's it, you're dead. You're permanently dead. But if you lose one of the games, you get retired and you just return to your normal life. So it's better that you lose than you die. So in a lot of these games, the Kamen Riders will team up and like work together to ultimately win the game and prevent people from dying. And so the game master effectively decides that Kamen Rider Geats is getting too close to discovering the truth about the games and what they are and solving the mystery. And he decides to start stacking the game against Kamen Rider Geats and trying to cheat and make him lose. And he starts to go like slowly insane. Tries to make it so he loses. Anyway, he ends up winning. He ends up beating the game master. And the producer comes in and is basically like, yeah, you've been cheating and you've been like stacking the deck against him. You're out now, basically. There's now a new game master. And the new game master comes in, and I said all that to basically be like, and now the game changes, and the third arc is its big brother. Like
Batman?
No. I mean, like, you know, like the reality show Big Brother?
No.
No, you don't know the reality show Big Brother. It's basically a bunch of people live in a house together, and they do various games, and like they vote each other out. Survivor in a house, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they have like confessionals where it becomes basically, I should have said, it becomes a reality show. So at the end of that season, you find out that the whole game, the whole Desire Grand Prix is a television show. It's a TV show, and there's a ton of spectators. And the new game master is leading into the fact that it's now a television show, and they're playing it up for the drama. And so it's a reality show complete with confessionals. So like they'll play games and it'll cut to the characters just saying confessionals, and like talking about their stuff. And they introduce a traitor mechanic. So it basically becomes Among Us. So they're all competing to win the Desire Grand Prix, but also now there is a traitor, or as they call it, the Disaster. And the Disaster basically has a secret mission, and they have to ultimately sabotage the other Kamen Riders. And if they at the end of each of the games, they vote on who they think the Disaster is, and if the Disaster can make it to the end of the game, like to the top 2, then they automatically win. You know,
this sounds really, really complicated.
It kind of is, but
I got to be honest. It's
I know. So it basically becomes Among Us, and it basically becomes Among Us. You know Among Us. You know how Among Us works. Basically, becomes
I do.
That. And so, you know how in those kind of games, if you do something. Like it's about not being suspicious, right? So in that arc, they introduce basically they bring in a bunch of new Kamen Riders, and they all die, or there's less of them now because it's about the reality show aspect of it. And they bring in 2 new riders, and one of them, his name is Daisuke, and he is the kind of character like who's like really arrogant, like super smart, and like, you know, the type of anime character where their whole bit is they're smart and arrogant. And they speak really slow.
So the dude that was in mine that became an alien.
Yes, kind of. It's very similar to him. And he shows up, and they there's the whole. It's one of those things where this is where it's a show, and you know how it's gonna work. So there's 2 new characters that come in, and immediately you're like, well, they're the 2 new characters, so they're gonna get eliminated. Like first, because they're not the main guys. They haven't been here since the beginning. So, and their costumes are less detailed. So they're not going to stick it out. They're going to get voted up. And then sure enough, there's a whole bit in the early on in that arc where the one tycoon who is basically a super idealist, like goody two shoes guy, they all suspect him of being the Disaster because he finds out that the Jamato are essentially like absorbing humans and like taking their intelligence and their knowledge or whatever, and they can now turn into humans. And so one of them turns into one of the previous Kamen Riders, and he hesitates because he thinks that he thinks that they're humans basically, and if he kills them, he's going to be killing humans. And so he hesitates, and they're all like, "Why did you hesitate to kill the Jamato? Like, it's our job to kill them. Your hesitation is causing us to lose. You're clearly the disaster." And so he goes and he tells Daisuke that this detail, and he's basically like, "Don't say anything. We don't want to freak anyone out. We don't want to cause them to like have any emotional strain." And it gets to the point where they're about to vote on him, and they're about to vote on who the disaster is. And he's like, "Oh," they're like, "Well, why didn't you attack? Why didn't you attack?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't attack because he turned into he was saying human stuff, and I thought he was a human. And I told you, Daisuke, right? I told you, Daisuke." And he was like, "No, you never said that. You never told me that. I have no idea what you're talking about." And it's like, "What?" I was like, "Well, okay, obviously then he's the disaster. He's the disaster then. Like, why would he not just tell the truth?" And so then it gets to the end of that episode, and obviously they all go like, "Well, it turned out," they all find out that, yeah, these guys are talking with human voices. And he's like, "Well, why did you lie about that? You're clearly the disaster." And so they all end up voting him out, and it turns out he's not the disaster. And it was like, well, why did you lie then? Why did you lie when they asked you about the why didn't you say, "Yeah, he said it"? Why did you make yourself immediately suspicious, dipshit? And so then for the rest of the series, he became dipshit. Like that's so every time he'd pop up, and I'd be like, "Oh, it's dipshit," and I had this little sketch in my brain where I was like, "Oh, it's dipshit. There's dipshit." And he'd be like, "No, my name's Daisuke." "Oh yeah, that's right, dipshit. Yeah." And he's like, "Oh,
that's what I said.
That's what I said.
Dipshit.
Dipshit." And it's just like, dude, you did this to yourself. And he comes back later on, and he comes back for like revenge. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so mad about the disaster thing." And I was like, you did this to yourself. And that's the third arc. And then very briefly, because the third arc took way too long to describe, you find out that the people running the Desire Grand Prix are from the future. They're from the far future, and they're basically spectators. And they're here. They set up this game, and they're just here for entertainment. And you find out that each of the Kamen Riders are all sponsored by a particular person. And so it's funny how you're like, oh, Cosmic States is your Super Saiyan. Geets, he has like 4 or 5 Super Saiyans. He gets his first one where basically you find out that he hit the whole Desire Grand Prix is basically being like, they're using this woman who turned into a goddess basically, and she's using her powers to grant all these wishes, and it turns out she's Geets' mother, and he's been reincarnating for like hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, and he remembers all of his reincarnations, and so he has all these wishes that have gone unfulfilled, and they become fulfilled, and he gets this new form, which is effectively Cosmic States, and it becomes about upgrading that form. And so eventually one of the sponsors is a super strong Kamen Rider, gives him his thing, and it becomes Super Saiyan 2 and Super Saiyan 3. And very long story, very short. They go through several iterations. It turns out that the Jamato are not actually evil. They were created purely to exist in this game and be slaughtered by Kamen Riders. And they're fighting back because they're tired of just being endlessly slaughtered.
That's fair.
Yeah, and it becomes like this morally gray, like, who really is the bad guy kind of thing. And yeah, the designs are fun. And I'm trying to like do this quickly because it feels like I'm summarizing.
You have been for the past while.
One of the things I love about my season is there's a surprising number of white people in it, Americans. Actually, not Americans, British people. There's my two favorite writers, who they don't get names, but basically one of the main ones, Kamen Rider Nago. She's a rich influencer, and she's got 2 bodyguards who are constantly, her whole bit for the most of the series is, there's a ton of twists in this series, like a ton. And it's so funny because I was like, I gave you Kamen Rider Forze because I was like, I knew it would be simple and I knew it wouldn't be convoluted. hearing mine, does it sound convoluted?
Oh, yours sounds absolutely
Yeah,
convoluted.
yeah, yeah. So this one reminds me a lot of Kamen Rider Build. Build was like this because I don't know if you remember all the times I came out and was describing Kamen Rider Build to you, and every time you'd be like, "This sounds insane," but it's like it's so entertaining. And yeah, the music is phenomenal. The music. I mean, I showed you the theme song. The music is so good. And my series is a newer one. It's the second newest one. So there's a lot of the cinematography is so good. It's funny we were making fun of the CGI in yours. It's not great, mind you, but it's starting to look like it's from 2008. So like it looks decent for what this show is capable of. Um, and it's the one time where I didn't mind multiple Kamen Riders. Like I fell off of Kamen Rider Gaim, because this one shares a lot of similarities with Gaim. I'm gonna spoil the end of Gaim, but at the end of Gaim, he becomes a god essentially, and him and one of the girls become a god, and that's how this ends. This ends with he basically takes the power from his mother and ascends and becomes a god and remakes the world where everyone can be happy and whatnot. And they're very similar in that regard. Anyway, sorry, the two guards. There's her two bodyguards are a black guy and a white guy, and you find out later on in the series that they were also Kamen Riders. But what's funny is because they're American. Well, the one of them's British and the one of them's American. There's scenes where they're just talking English to each other, like
Oh, that would be weird.
like there's this moment where they're talking about how the girl hasn't tried to escape in a while. So I just like to think like in their spare time, they just speak like when they're off the clock or when it's just them, they just talk English to each other. But it turns out that they're common. It turns out that they're Kamen Riders, and they had participated in a previous Desire Grand Prix. But because they're bigger than Japanese people, obviously no Japanese stunt person would look right. So you never see them transform. Like you just see them. The one guy you see him like he does the sequence, and they have their whole like. So it's funny. You asked me earlier. You were like, "Is the doing the hand motions like part of it? Do they have to do that?" And no, because in Kamen Rider Gaim, the first time he transforms, he does it accidentally. And he's like, what is going on? What is happening? And then the next time he does it, he does the hand motions. So no, it's funny because each of these Kamen Riders and Geats all have their own hand motions. So there's scenes where there's like 4 or 5 of them all transforming. And like they're all doing stupid hand motions, and some of them are more elaborate than others. It's so, but it's funny. So there's a really fun moment later on where Gaim's sponsor, who's like his biggest fan, shows up, and you think Gaim is dead. Not Gaim. Geats. You think Geats is dead,
Time.
and he does Geats' transformation hand motions, and it's really funny. It's a really fun callback. But yeah, one of Geats' lives is he was a white guy. He wasn't like for one of his reincarnations. He wasn't always Japanese. For his second reincarnation, he's just a white guy. And
That's funny.
So there's a scene where you see all of his mothers over all of his reincarnations, and one of them's just straight up a white woman. And it's like, what the weird, so strange. Yeah, it's so
One of these things just ain't like the other.
so bizarre. So with yours, what's interesting for you, and is like I said, with each of these
FaceTime.
each of these series, they all have a movie. And they all have a team-up movie, and they're usually called war movies. So they all have vignettes. So one of the vignettes is usually, so like for yours, there was one where it's O's and was it O's? No, it's Wizard and Forze, and each of them have their individual story, and then in the ending, at the end of it,
That hurt.
They team
That
up
hurt my
together
knee.
and they fight a big bad thing. So Forze has come back a lot. He's been in quite a number of movies and quite a number of sequels. So one of yours is, and I would encourage you maybe to check them out in your spare time because they're pretty interesting. But there's one where it takes place 5 years later, and basically you find out that Gentaro he actually still is at the school, and he works for the school now, and he is basically Suspenders guy.
Yeah.
He's him. Effectively, he is now taken over as the teacher sponsor of the Kamen Rider Club, and it ends with him giving up the powers basically, and he stops being Forze. And then yeah, this what's interesting about ultimately about Kamen Rider as a whole and Sentai and Tokusatsu I found is the willingness of these guys to just come back and be these characters endlessly is remarkable. Like the guy who plays Marvelous, he's come back a ton. Like not even all of Gokaiger, but just him, just to be in stuff. He's come back like a bunch, and they've done a bunch of sequel movies, and a bunch of additional stuff. The one I watched, the superhero Tyson, takes place after or during I think Forze. So he shows up in that, and he's a main character in that. And that one's kind of interesting. That one's fun because at the end of it, very long story, very short, one of the riders ends up summoning a robot, one of the big robots, and he's attacking everybody. There's a moment at the end where basically the plot of that movie is all of the enemies of the Kamen Rider and all of the enemies of the Super Sentai have teamed up to basically kill all of them. And there's a moment at the end where a bunch of them all grow big, like you do in a Super Sentai or Power Rangers. And the Go Busters fight them in their for lack of a better word, Megazord. And one at the end, he ends up with one of the Kamen Riders, Kamen Rider D End, winds up with this thing, and he summons a bigger robot, and he's fighting them in the bigger robot, and they give the Kentaro comes out, Kenta, the guy who's a huge dick, he comes out and he gives Kamen Rider Forze 2 new switches, and he jumps in to the yellow Go Busters Zord and starts piloting it, and he uses his switches, and it summons a rocket, and he punches them with the rocket punch. That's cool. That's what I was gonna say. So there's a bunch of movies. So his summer movie, one of his summer movies, you know how he randomly shows up with that form, which was the 2 rockets?
Yeah.
That's from the movies. He gets that in one of the movies.
Oh.
Yeah.
That explains that.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the ones that you said. It's one of them. It takes place between like episode 16 and 17, and yeah, that's where he gets that. And then there's another one where he has a form which is essentially a fusion of him and Meteor. So it's Meteor states, and it's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's got his basically it's Forze's head with Meteor's body essentially. And it's them. I don't think they're like. I think he just takes his powers. I don't think that they're actually fused together. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And the movies are always fun. They're always like, oh, they get a bit more of a budget, and that's typically where like they'll introduce the next guy. So like in the Sentai movies, they'll introduce the next team in the Kamen Rider. So like in the Kamen Rider O's movie, they introduced Kamen Rider Wizard. He shows up and he does one scene, and that's generally where you get an idea of his powers and all that sort of stuff. What else did I want to cover about Geats? I talked about Dipshit. Oh yeah, so eventually Dipshit comes back, and there's the show eventually establishes a villain in this sponsor who effectively just wants to create destruction, and he teams up with her a bunch, and his whole thing is his wishes. He wants the collective memories and knowledge of all humanity, so he becomes a Jamato and kills one of the guy's sister. And there's a bunch of really sick, like towards the back half of the series, they all get their like final forms basically, and they're all dope and they're all badass. There's this one guy who his final form is essentially like a samurai ninja guy, and he's super cool. Yeah, Geats' final form is really cool. And yeah, anyway, so he comes back and he absorbs the memories and knowledge of humans, and he realizes that you can gain happiness just from being like a regular person, from just being happy and a good person. So he changes alliances and he becomes a good guy, and he changes all the Jamato essentially into good. They become good by the end of it, and it's kind of cute. And so I kept calling him Dipshit. and if it was like, oh, it's dipshit. Here's dipshit. Dipshit's back. And then at a certain point, it became a fun, like, loving nickname. It's like, oh, dipshit. Now it's a nice nickname. It's meant lovingly. It's no longer meant
It's a
as an
term of
insult.
endearment.
It's endearing now. Yeah, no.
It's a it's a term of endearment
It's a
now.
term of endearment. Yeah. And it's the thing about Kamen Rider that's interesting is the acting is so much better than the show they're in. Like, that's the thing about it. There's so many moments where you're like, wow, and like, apparently I was reading about it in Japan. Kamen Rider is a stepping stone for good actors to go do better stuff, basically. So, like, the guy who plays the main guy, Kamen Rider Forza, he went off and he's apparently been in a ton of, like, award-winning Japanese movies. And there's so many scenes where you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling this character. This character doesn't really have much. And then by episode 30, you're like, wow, like, this character has so much emotion. And I one thing, as much as watching 48 episodes in a week was a challenge, it was a challenge. There was definitely something to be said about watching 48 episodes of television. Like, I mean, you cared. You were starting to get a little misty at the end. You were feeling feelings for these characters. Like, it's so, I don't know if it's organically good, if it's manipulative, but it, like, yeah, by the end of it, like, you really feel for these characters, and when they die or these shows aren't afraid to kill characters off. Like, they're not afraid to hurt people. They're not afraid to be violent.
More than Power Rangers,
Power Rangers, for sure. It takes itself seriously. Like, it's not afraid to have the people do a screaming monologue while wearing the costume. Like, there's so many moments in Gates where, like, they're doing these really intense, like, emotionally intense monologues, and they're wearing the costumes. And Japan's not afraid to, like, have a character and it's like you said, their faces and they're so expressive, but they're so good at emoting, like, with their voice. It's like, yeah. It's like, it's not just, and it's like, because half the time they're not in the suits. So yeah, it has to be on their voice, and they're not just good actors; they're good voice actors too.
And that has everything to do with the fact that in Japan, a lot of words sound the same, and it is the inflection that makes the words different.
Exactly.
So that definitely plays into it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And what's interesting is that, and the demographic for Kamen Rider, I think I mentioned it earlier, but I probably got froze out. Who knows? Is generally for 8 to 9 year olds. 8 to 9 year olds, and incredibly middle-aged suburban moms in Japan, like Japanese housewives, love Kamen Rider, and that's why it gets so, like, okay, they love, like, Japanese housewives love Kamen Rider. Do you see why? I guess maybe is what I should ask.
Yeah, to a degree. It definitely screams a show that you can put on and your kid can enjoy, and while they're enjoying it, you don't hate it.
Yeah, well, for me, it's like, especially mine, it's very much like you put it on and the kids love the superhero, the costumes, the lasers, and then the moms love the melodrama. Like, mine in particular, yours is way less. I give you one of the less melodramatic ones, but they love, it's like it's melodramatic as a soap opera a lot of times, where people are getting killed off, brought back, resurrected. There's twists and turns, and like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like, there's a lot of times where I was like, oh, genuinely, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, I didn't see that coming. And I know you felt a similar way. There's a lot of moments where you were like, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, there was definitely a few twists and turns.
I would say that the writing on this show is better than it should be. Like, this show, like, it's so funny because, like, I recommend this show to people, and I fully do. Fully recommend any season of Kamen Rider. I'm gonna talk about in a minute how I feel you should get into this franchise. I think your season's a good starting point, but a lot of people, I go, you got to watch this show. It's really good. Like, it's really good. You would like it, and they get put off by the silly costumes and they picture Power Rangers, and I'm like, you gotta remove yourself from Power Rangers. It's not Power Rangers. It's better than Power Rangers. it takes itself seriously. It takes itself 1,000% seriously, and it's like even when it looks silly, it works and it's so good. And that leads me to my question, Jordan. My ultimate question: did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. I would the way that I would describe if I was trying to get
As a sorry, I'm just
the
gonna cut you.
average person.
I just want to qualify one thing. As a person who has never watched this before, this is the first time you've ever watched this. Did you like it? There we go. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
Yes, I did. I enjoy it in the same way, and this is the way that if I was to try and get a person to watch this, the way that I would say it is, if you enjoy anime, this has all the best qualities of a good anime.
Right.
Mine did anyway.
Right.
Um,
It's live action anime, like a good
it's
anime.
it is a good live action anime where, yeah, it's silly, yeah, it can be over the top, but it also has that, especially in mine being a high school kind of drama scenario, it has all the good inter like relationship qualities that
Yeah.
like a Suzumiya show has, or I mean
Sailor
that
Moon.
to me is a perfect
That's
example of that has Sailor Moon, like those have your sci-fi battles like this does with the weird monster gimmicky stuff, but it also has the interpersonal drama stuff
yeah.
as well.
Absolutely. It has heart.
So
It has heart.
I would definitely say that this is written like a solid anime is.
And the guy who plays Kamen Rider 4 is one of those people. I love that character so much. I genuinely do. That when there's been a few times where I'm watching they've done a few anniversary specials, a few anniversary seasons. There's one where it's there's two. One of them's not good in my opinion. That's Kamen Rider Decade. That's the 10th anniversary special. And then they have one. Oh, that's what I was gonna. That was one of the things I was gonna mention real quick. Um, very brief history of Japan. Um, Japan, Jordan, I'm not sure if you know this, is still a monarchy. They have an emperor, a king still. And so each era of this show is separated by a historical era. So, early Kamen Rider or early Godzilla movies, to relate it to stuff that you're more familiar with, like the original Godzilla movies, are from the Showa era. Um, what you watched is from the Heisei era. And what I'm watching is from the Reiwa era. And the Reiwa era is a lot cleaner, a lot slicker. The Heisei era is a lot rougher and sillier. And yeah. So it's they're two different eras of Kamen Rider show. I meant to mention that up top as part of the history. But so you enjoyed it. Follow-up question. Would you watch another one? Not Super Sentai, but would you watch another Kamen Rider?
Yes, but not in a week.
Not in a week. Yes, without the element of having to finish it in a week. If I gave you 2 weeks, would you watch another one of these?
Yeah, depending on what the vibe felt like.
So here's
If I
here's what
thought that it felt fun,
here's what I'll say. Okay, when it comes to Kamen Rider, if you're like, oh, I want to watch this show, it sounds interesting. I'm into this. I don't mind reading some subtitles, and mostly because it's old, and there's a lot of bad child acting. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. Um, go with a modern one. So I would say pick a seat for you. Okay, so when we do this again, because I would absolutely love to do this again, and hopefully it's more successful next time. When I do this again, I want you to pick it on your own, and I want you to pick a season, pick a Kamen Rider season on your own, and this is how I would recommend you do it. Pick an aesthetic you like. So that's why I had you identify the theme and the gimmick. So the theme and gimmick, obviously, for yours is space and switches, and also try to find switches. Find a premise you like. So you could absolutely, if you want to, you can continue on and do the next season, which is Kamen Rider Wizard, which is about magic, and using spells, and his belt is using spells and stuff, and that's pretty fun. The one that follows him is Kamen Rider Ghost, and he's literally what it sounds like. He dies, and his is about trying to find the powers to come back to life. And pick an aesthetic and a story you roughly like, and go from there. Try to avoid anniversary seasons if you can, because when it comes to Kamen Rider, they're never as good as Gokaiger. Gokaiger is nice because you don't have to have a working knowledge of Sentai to enjoy that season. But for a lot of this, they get kind of confusing. Like Decades, okay, or W. You would also like W. W is also good. That's a hard-boiled detective noir kind of story. But yeah, pick an aesthetic and pick a story that you like. Like there's one season that's about video games that's quite good, and that's what I would recommend people start. But yeah, like I said, if you're a fan of Power Rangers and you find that Power Rangers is a little too child friendly for you, you're like, oh, this is too much for kids, I highly recommend going to Japan and watching this stuff, because yeah, it's kind of violent. Like there was one moment in mine where the guy like jumps on the guy he's fighting and like arm bars him and just straight up breaks his arm. Like he arm bars me, like snap, and it's like, oh, that's what it would look like if someone used an arm bar to break an arm. Interesting. And yeah, it's yeah. So if you like reasonable violence that's not over the top and good solid character drama, Geats is good, man. It's a good series. There's excellent the choreography's good. It's like I said, these series for me live and die on their costume design and their aesthetics, and the costume design in both of these series. Like that's the first one I watched, and it's really good, and it's a nice easy. Would you say it's a nice easy beginner series to get into for this?
Forza? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Forza is, yeah.
Yeah, it's not overly complicated. The characters are like nice and easy to get into, and
yeah.
So, with that having been said, we're gonna do a part 3. I'm totally kidding, Jordan. I just saw Jordan flinch. No, we're not doing a part 3. We are gonna do a Super Sentai episode one day. We're gonna come back to this because I want to do a Super Sentai / Ultraman special. Talk about some Ultraman stuff, but that will be over the course of probably multiple weeks as well. We're gonna take 2 weeks to watch. I think what we might do next time is I think we'll do watch some Ultraman stuff, and we'll split up in 2 parts, and we'll do it as a 2-parter. So we'll do first 1 week we'll do half of it, and then the other week we'll do, you know what? In fact, maybe we'll do it this way. 1 week we'll do half of it. Second week we'll do the other half, and we'll fold in some summer movies in there as well, and we'll come back to this because I love this genre. Quite honestly, this is maybe my way of like working my way into doing a spin-off of this where I just talk about that stuff, because I love that stuff. I feel like it's underrated in the West. Like I say, like there's this weird like conflict between Power Rangers fans and Sentai fans that I feel shouldn't exist, because like it's all great. It's all great stuff. And it's super fun. But that was our epic 2-parter. It wound up being 2 hours. Incredible. There's a bunch of technical issues in here. Hopefully you heard some to all of this to most of this. I had a great time watching these series. It was easily the greatest challenge we've had so far. It was tough. We almost didn't make it. But with that, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope maybe you go check out one of these series. Go check it out. It's gonna be good. We did it, Jordan. Jordan, let's fist bump each other. No, do it sideways, Jordan. Sideways. Oh, he's doing it into the camera. There we go. We're fist bumping. We're virtually fist bumping. For those audio listeners, if you can't see us, we're fist bumping. So with that, we're gonna see. Here comes the assignment for next week, everybody. It's gonna be much easier for both me and Jordan because this was tough. Like it's gotta be easier. So
this was work.
This was work. This is one of those rare times it felt like work. As much as I enjoyed it, it felt like work. So the assignment for next week: comic book stuff based on a comic book, but there's a condition. You're not allowed to pick any MCU stuff. You're not allowed to pick any DCEU stuff. It's try to get obscure. If you get desperate, you can pick a Raimi Spider-Man. One of them. Maybe the first one. You could pick a Raimi Spider-Man if you're feeling desperate. But try to get originals. Who knows? We never know what's going to happen. But I had a good time this week. I don't know about you. On the show, I had a good time. Appreciate it. Anyway, this has been the Spur of the Moment podcast. As always, I'm Justin Spurr. That's the incomparable Jordan. Thank you to our sponsor Susan with Flight Center. Click our link in the description. Go work with her. Travel somewhere. Tell her we sent you. You can find us on
Jazz
Discord.
hands.
You can find us on Discord. You can make suggestions for some stuff based on a comic book. Leave it in the comments of this video as well. I'm hoping I'm going to cut out that Kamen Rider bit and turn it into a video. There's going to be a 2-minute rant in the middle of it about how all the technical issues and how difficult it was. But who cares? Who cares? Find us on Discord. The link is in the description. You can find me on TikTok. I'm still on TikTok. I'm still doing it. I'm still making videos. Have a good day, everybody.